I could just talk about sales for 45 minutes.
Both of us could harp on that. That's the engine to every business.
Right.
And somehow the thing that people don't want to talk about. I agree with you completely when you really know. I will say from a recent experience, because I just did this training in Texas, I had two 45-minute slots. One felt like a home run. The other one felt like I outperformed my peers, but I didn't show up world class. And when I do anything, I'm not worried about my peers. I'm speaking in a manner where if John C. Maxwell and Tony Robbins and Gary Vee were all there speaking and I have a slot in between them, everyone's going to say, dang, that dude Earl, he hung with the Giants. I think the key difference between my two training slots, where I had a much better outline for the second topic, and it was more chronologically on par with the way the days are going. So when you do a training in like financial services, you kind of want to go from basic to complex through the day. And then Sunday is where you get into your super complex topics or your really powerful complex where you're combining multiple different things. So by Sunday, someone's like, okay, I see how all this fits together and how to use it. And I have the information to go execute and make $20,000 a month. So my training the first day, it was chaotic because the main organizer of the event hadn't arrived yet. He had not arrived because FAA stuff, he was sitting on a plane for 5 hours on the runway just to deplane, to replane, to deplane, to have to buy a different flight because FAA stuff. While that was happening, a bunch of different people were just coming up with different stuff, just all over the place. And then the guy right before my slot, he knew what I was going to talk about. And then he started talking about it for 15, completely threw off my flow. And I did the best that I could with it. However, it wasn't day two where there's no one who was talking about what I was talking about. And my depth of knowledge and my outline and how deep I could go on the second topic, talking about the constitutional tax codes that create financial assets, talking about the lobbyists in Washington, D.C., and how things come to be. Like I have hours and hours and hours of ammo on that second topic. And there was a phenomenal difference in how the presentation came out.
I was sitting here thinking about this as you were speaking. Our respective journeys in life shape who we are as individuals. And when I think back to when I was in the military, the last job that I had was an instructor. I had to structure my strategy to educate my students on whatever topic that we were covering. My students would range from E1, which is brand new enlisted, to 05 lieutenant colonel, and like that's a high officer. I have to like strategize how I'm going to present the information in a way that reaches everybody, because I can't talk to the E1 the way I talk to the 05 and vice versa. These are all of the things that are like the conditioning. And when you think back over the course of your career, how the things that you had no idea how much that it would factor into your future self, those small, intricate details that you worked out because that's the stage of life that you were in. But then you make it to this stage and you've refined that. So now that's a part of your arsenal, and you present that at will depending on the objective.
Most definitely, brother. It's amazing how we are literally a mosaic of our different experiences, creating like this self-made entity. I've always loved the quote, everyone is self-made, but only the wealthy will admit it. So I definitely admit it, I'm self-made, but I got here through teamwork.
I was just talking with one of my clients about this earlier today. She was talking to me about how proud of her general manager that she is, because she's hustling. With the government shutdown, that impacted her revenue stream. So her general manager stepped up like, all right, well, we finna go do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. All of these different things to create brand awareness within the community. Like, I applaud that. However, the misnomer that endless cycle of hustling is a victory. If you just hustling to hustle, in that situation where she's going out, the general manager, not only her, but her team as well, they're going out while on the clock and doing certain things. Now, what that brings back, because they feel good that they're doing something, but there's no strategy behind it to say, when we talk to someone, this is the call to action that we use to measure success. It's just talk to people, and whatever happens, happen. Like, are you asking people to follow you? Are you asking people to register for a class that you offer? Are you like, what do you want them to do when you talk to them at these events? Just spread the name. What does that mean? What are we doing?
The way I've always looked at hustling is it is the spirit that of entrepreneurialism. It's like, I'm going to make something happen, and I'm willing to go against adversity and unfavorable conditions to make that thing happen. And it's more of an emotional appeal than it is one that's intellectual or structured. And the spirit is very important to have. But if you don't create a framework and a system and criteria where we can measure your productivity, you will always be a hustler. So it's okay to have some hustle in your muscle as long as you have the right criteria around you and the right framework to be successful on your own terms. And unfortunately, I think a lot of our community looks at being a perpetual hustler as an achievement and a goal, when the ultimate goal is to have an establishment where you're hiring staff, where, especially after this last week of conferences for me, where you are buying other businesses and scaling those, because it is our civic duty to raise the economic floor in our community, because if you can do it, you must do it. I like what Jim Rohn always used to say. If you can make $10,000 a year and you have the ability to do that, then you must do that. If you can make $100,000 a year and you are able to do that, then you must. If you can make millions, then you must make millions by you reaching out your personal incentive while we're in production mode. We're not talking about retirement mode. We're not talking about a time in our life where we're spending it with our parents that are in hospice. We're talking about when we're in build mode, that staying on and doing as much as we humanly can is the real driver of the economy. And it is the invisible hand, that we've heard about for hundreds of years.
I was talking with my baby girl last night, and I had her open up Perplexity so she can check the details for herself. Because what I'm constantly advocating to her is, I'm not here to teach you what to think. I'm teaching you how to think for yourself and to understand like what the stakes are, like what's really going on. So I had her look up the federal law enforcement engagement in Chicago that involved an apartment building. I just had her look, just search for that. And as she's reading, she's like, oh my God. As those types of things are happening more and more frequently, there is a human toll that comes with the heaviness of the darkness. Flipping that to the business side, though, how does creating that type of environment in a business ecosystem impact the exchange of commerce?
I would definitely think, off the top of my head, the first thing I feel firing out is that, helicopter leadership, these people who are micromanaging is the process of over disciplining talent so that they can leave your business. You know, it's putting yourself in a position where you are doing unpaid labor to do someone else's labor. Trusted leader in that community, then let them handle that community. The most ironic thing about the timing of, calling the National Guard, I'm going to clean these streets up. Chicago, Baltimore, and Detroit are both on the largest declines for crime that we have seen in like over 50 years. And it's interesting. They all have young Black leadership. And not just to say being Black is what's changing it there, because they've had terrible Black leadership there as well. But having someone who's resonating with the core audience on what they need, what they want, and delivering, I think that applies 100% to business. If you have no idea what your client base really, really needs, and you're just pulling stuff out of a hat, it makes no progress. And then maybe you shouldn't be a trusted leader in whatever department or facilities that you're running.
Mine generally goes to SWOT and pest analysis just from the perspective of proactively, strategically planning for all plausible outcomes within a business. If we know now that federal agents and entities, because it's not just agents, it's military as well, federal resources can be mobilized to a local community. As a community, how do we plan to deal with that as a business community? When everyone is buried in their work to survive, there is no unity. There's survival. In the course of just merely surviving, we leave ourselves vulnerable to these types of things. Now, when I think about power in the United States of America, the power of a well-placed dollar in the United States capitalistic system is basically how all of this stuff works. When there is a community of business owners that understand the inherent responsibility to employ their community, to empower nonprofits that provide vital support and services to the community, it's not going to take long before elected officials start to show up looking for the opportunity to get their name in that. And now we're building influence. So that when these things happen, it's a different kind of conversation because there is accountability from the people that are actually making the community work. So I think of all of this as a wake-up call. Like I shared in the closing last week, these times are too dire to just be sitting on the sideline, being content with, just being able to take care of yourself and your family. These aren't those times.
Yeah, a person all wrapped up in themselves makes a mighty small package. And in the interest of what you're saying, earlier we touched on the note that it's our civic duty to do what we can. That's the only way we're really going to solve problems, because once again, I'm a proponent of let's normalize solving our problems without the government. How do we do that? Through entrepreneurship, through nonprofits, but through community. And a lot of times community is going to break down to you working with someone that prays different than you, looks different than you, and lives a different lifestyle than you. Can you keep the main thing, and can we focus on potholes, keeping our kids safe in schools? Can we focus on grants? Can we focus on, higher level education, increasing their costs faster than any other S&P 500 company that we have in the United States? During lockdown, when all of the kids had to go to school via Zoom, and they still increased the price 20% that year, red flags should have went off. People should have been marching on Capitol Hill saying, hey, this is arbitrary. You guys are just making up any cost that you want for education. and you're working in cahoots with the government because Sally Mae is writing most of the loans for the education. So this is all just a big ploy to create revenue for the IRS, even though you're using money from the IRS to build these entities. And then at the same time, we have these giant trust funds that we call endowments that each higher level education unit has. And some of these endowments are bigger than the GDP of a whole country. All that money's growing tax-free, billions and billions of dollars. Like, what are we actually doing? What are we doing? What is the goal?
And that's the issue. It's not a unified goal. It's a million small goals instead of a unified vision and strategy. And so long as we continue to operate that way, so long as the folks that are really pulling the strings at the highest level will continue to have their way.
Definitely. I know, you have a beautiful German engineered vehicle, and we talked about it on the last episode, all the different German engineers. And it was asked at one point in time, it's like, you guys have engineer after engineer after engineer and physicists. What is the secret? How is Germany finding all these great minds? And the answer was like, well, we believe in educating the poor as well as the wealthy. And it's like, if that's not a mic drop, I don't know what is, where we live in this pseudo elitist culture where there are people who really think that their bloodline and their net worth in turn correlate to their intelligence. Whereas we look at most of the greatest creations we've ever seen have come from those who have had the least. Some who were literal enslaved people, that were able to design something and how to describe it in their third language. Absolutely incredible.
That was one of the things I found interesting. So when you talk about community shared values, as a community of German citizens, they have collectively decided that public education is a high priority that everybody has signed off. So living in Germany for 6 years, my ex-wife, she was born in Ethiopia, and her two sisters were adopted by a German family. So she grew up with a German mom and dad. Both of her parents are teachers. And when I'm looking at how, because I could see firsthand how the kind of life that they lived, we haven't collectively, as an American society, said education is a collective, no negotiation on that one. Like we're gonna go all in on education. That's not how that. We haven't collectively done that as a people. So to see how that materializes in Germany, because it reverberates throughout their economy, and you can see the reverberation of the latter here in America through TikTok and these other social media platforms, where we are not prioritizing productive education. Like it's just not a societal priority.
It's not. It's almost like we hit the critical point of the creature from Jekyll Isle, where the Board of Education had this idea, let's educate people using a Prussian model. Let's make sure these kids are forced off the farms so they don't learn how to live off the land, how to produce their own as their parents have and their parents' parents, and on and on and on, however long they were on that land. They had to be forced into school by the National Guard, and you have these bells ring at 8 a.m., just like it does in some military services, or 7 a.m., just depends on where you went to school. You eat lunch at a certain time of the day, and you're getting conditioned to respond to bells 7 to 8 times a day. The school I went to, we had 8 periods and lunch. So that's 9 different bells that I'm getting conditioned on for 18,000 hours. And that conditioning is so deep. Now we have a nation with problems, and we have people that don't have the intellectual training to get out of that work mode, to get into creation mode, to actually save the country. And that's why you and I do what we do.
I started talking about the conversation I was having with my client earlier. And my perspective is us as entrepreneurs, we are those who, when you look at that hamster wheel that I described last week, like we're all on that hamster wheel running in pursuit of what you just described, right? Which is to adhere to bells going off and them telling us when we need to move to the next assignment. That type of thing. Well, then you have, so we're the ones that jump off the hamster wheel. Now, for me, I look at those who have committed to an endless cycle of hustling as hopping on their own hamster wheel. So instead of being on the hamster wheel with everybody else, they just running in place by themselves, but they're not making no progress.
Right. It might be a wider hamster wheel. You know, I might have some chrome on it. You might get a few more water breaks a day than everyone else, but you're still on a hamster wheel. That is such a great metaphor. You know, and I know you talk to your clients about this all the time, but Robert Kiyosaki, when we talk about the 4 quadrants, and the majority of folks are at employee or self-employed, when we want to cross this axis and we want to get to business owner and investor, where the business owner actually has systems, the business owner actually has leverage, the business owner has more hours a week going into their business than that business owner could physically work. There's only 168 hours in a week, right? But this business owner has 10 people on the staff, and these 10 people are collectively putting in 600 hours a week into the business. That's a great way to buy your time back. That's a great way to get off the hamster wheel. That is a great way to service your community. As I've said it once and I've said it again, if your dream is only big enough for your prosperity to come from, you are operating too small. Your dream has to be big enough for several others' dreams to come into fruition from your own. And their dream is going to live inside of the space that you've cultivated. So you're laying down good soil for other people to drop seeds.
Again, because these times require it. It's wild to me to like recognize how effective that the puppet masters truly are at playing the master game of deception and distraction.
People don't even feel the strings.
That conditioning creates an environment where people are not believing their lying eyes because they've been told that what they're seeing is a lie.
They're not believing their lying eyes. Man, that is rich. It's so interesting that, you know, business really is being a master of the mundane. It's basically, can you be bored inside of something that's productive? Like, of course, when you're client facing, you should have charisma, you should have energy. But a lot of being very successful is boring and monotonous. And I think that's where people get lost and jump overboard. They're like, dang, this does not feel like Wolf of Wall Street. It doesn't. It's, right. You know what I mean? I gotta go to the next thing. I gotta go to the next thing. I gotta go to the next thing. Where people just get barely above mediocre in one thing and then they hop over to the next shiny object. Because their mind has been conditioned in a way where their solace has always been television. It's been television and movies and MySpace and now, you know, TikTok, all these different things that they look at on their phone where their brain is just dying. Like, let me get a hit of dopamine, please. Please. I got these cheeseburgers, man. Come on. Where we really got to sit them down and say, hey, this is what winning looks like. It's not something that is crazy and ceremonious, but you pack enough boring days together where you hit your numbers, there's going to be a ceremony for you.
And I think a big piece of that though, that depends on those that kind of stumbled and fumbled into their means of survival versus, because like for me, bro, what I do, I promise you it's not work. Like it's how my mind is wired. I am truly having fun anytime that I'm having these types of conversations. Like for real, for real. You know, that comes because it's like when I first watched that show and I'm seeing the moves, like how that world worked of moving from place to place and having impact upon impact on various businesses. It's like, man, that shit is dope. So
I can't say that my mind is just 100% wired. Like I'm definitely thinking about business at 90% of my waking hours. And I've learned to have fun with it in the process, but it's not something that is inherently fun to me, depending on what aspect of my business that I'm working. Now, I have, because I'm a true salesman in my heart of hearts, I have so much fun with the crazy clients and the difficult clients. And I remember when I was working telecom, or even when I was doing property and casualty over the phone, some of the just trying to hustle. It's like, oh, I'm talking to someone. Oh, they got an accent they can barely understand. Oh, they speak Italian. Well, I speak a little Spanish. Let's see how close we can get to landing this plane. And I'm speaking Spanish and in Italian. Soy un hombre de negocios. And the person had to be like, man, this dude really wants this sell. I sure do. But more so, I want to look at myself and say that I tried every day and that I left no stone unturned. And if somebody calls me on some crazy energy, you're getting called right back. And I'm going to mess with you until it's time for my next call. You call me cursing me out, saying my mama this, my mama that, and just hung up, called you. Hey, so the call dropped and I understand you really want to get the service. Hold on. Hello? Can you hear me? So I'm going to start from the top just to reclaim my power. And it's something that I've had to teach my guys and gals to reclaim their power and to let it be a game and to let the numbers be your friend. Because that's the part that takes most salespeople out is rejection. They don't realize the easiest way to double your rate of success is to triple your rate of failure.
I love
But
that.
I know it. I've been flown all around this beautiful marble to get awards for being number one in the enterprise. And I got to number one because I failed more than everyone, but I failed quicker. When I saw it was a non-sale, I was able to move on to the next client, or just taking the shot, shooting the shot. Oh, you hate us? You hate our services? You don't want to get the mailer anymore? All right, let me walk you through how we're going to do this so you never get it again. All right, did you know that because your social security number is pretty much sold to the highest bidder, that's how Domino's and everybody hits you up? Go to this website. I'm going to walk you through how to make sure you get no advertisements ever. Okay, and we're doing this process, and they're starting to laugh. They're starting to come down, and right before I get them off the phone, like, it's all done. You'll never get anything from us, from Papa John's, from Jones Barbecue and Foot Massage. Nobody's going to hit you up ever again. You're out the system. But let me ask you this. Are you married to DirecTV at this point? Or if someone had a deal where you saved so much money and you got everything you wanted, would you entertain another company? Because I know you're never going to talk to us again. You're never going to hear from us again. How much are you paying? And then we get into the sales conversation, and I was closing about 2 out of every 8 of those. So that's 25% closing ratio for someone that called to quit the service and tell us we sucked. That's pretty good. But when I started stacking the numbers, doing the math, I'm like, okay, throughout a whole month, I ended up getting an extra 12 sales through that. And that's how I was whooping people, getting an extra 30 sales to my next closest colleague. That's fun to me. That's winning.
Yeah, it really is. Being able to get somebody to be able to see that, because you just painted a picture, there. And I could see exactly what you were saying. Well, so my last client of the day, his daughter, his daughter is, I think she's 18, 17 or 18. Like, dealing with a teenager, it's hit and miss if you're going to be able to like really get them engaged in something that, as a parent. Like, so my baby girl that's 15, I guess the easiest way to describe it, if there are two people on this earth that look at President Barack Obama like whatever, it's his two daughters. Like, that's just kind of how
Yes.
that goes, right?
Yes.
Well, like that same thing kind of exists with, so she's doing a lot of social media stuff as far as posting all of the stuff on the page or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What we were talking about today was actually being able to measure what good looks like, because we can just be posting stuff on social media till we blue in the face. That don't mean that that's going to convert into an actual conversation. So then it was like, because in order to like build out that full sales process, like you're measuring all of the points of conversion. So, taking that from social media to, all right, the awareness was generated on social media, the interest was satisfied on the website, which then resulted in a discovery meeting, which then resulted in an estimate being drafted and presented, and we get conversion or not. Well, getting his daughter to understand how the amount of estimates that we receive in each week and how they are converting, how that impacts what she's doing on social media. Because she's just posting. And it's like,
Right.
but like, you got to understand how it all ties together. So if we're doing all of this social media content and all of this posting, and we're not ultimately generating estimates, we're not
What are we
getting the
doing?
opportunity to sell our services.
Right. What's the end game?
So painting that picture for her to be able to see. So now as she's doing the things that she's doing, she's not just posting on social media, she's understanding the bigger picture. We're looking to get estimates out of this. And we're looking to see what that conversion rate is. So if we got 10 estimates, how many of them turn into paying customers? So painting that picture.
Yes, sir. I know you're going to know this because we're in the same age range. Man, you remind me of Robert Townsend, but you're not Meteor Man, you're Metric Man. Give you a couple metrics and you could take down, what was it, the Gold Gang, the Baby G's.
No, it's real. It's real. Because
That's so powerful, though. You're 100% right. Even if we're getting a lot of attention on social media, where is it going and why are we doing it?
right. So if we not getting estimates, then we're not getting the opportunity to compete. So, that's not a completed sales strategy. That's just doing some shit and hoping that it comes together. And it's like, well, now let's think about how much time that you're going to spend just aimlessly posting on social media. Now that is taking you away from things that are actually like no shit bringing money into the business. So it's like, well, how much does it make sense for me to continue to do these things that aren't, it's all, so in business, right? We don't think about opportunity cost as entrepreneurs enough. So I had a mini discovery meeting today, and in it, I'm talking to her about what her metrics have been, and like watching her face, like I could feel that, but now I can see that, right? Because we talked about how, so cost of goods sold increased 2.4% from second quarter to third quarter. That 2.3%, 2.4% based on what she's generated in revenue so far this year is $11,000. So then the question is, do you know what caused you to lose that $11,000? Opportunity costs, right? When you are doing certain things, it prevents you from doing things that only you can do. And you're not thinking about that. You're not out in the community shaking hands, kissing babies, building relationships with folks, because us as entrepreneurs are literally one handshake away from changing the trajectories of our business. One relationship could change everything. If you are like head down doing the job of your business every day, then when do you have the opportunity to build those relationships with the folks that are going to change the trajectory of your business? That's opportunity cost. And that varies from individual to individual based on the balance or imbalance that they have in their priorities and how that like materializes throughout the course of the week.
That's major. That's a major gem. You're losing $11,000 because of opportunity costs. Most of the time, we don't extrapolate a real number for opportunity cost. Like, dang, if I would have invested in Bitcoin a few years back, boy, I would be up. Right. When really that's not a real opportunity cost that's lost, because the person that you were 6 years ago, would you have put $100,000 something that you didn't understand well? No. Are you the type of person that even puts $100,000 into investments that you understand well now? No. Then what are we talking about? That's nonsense. But what you're talking about is a reality that your cost of goods has creeped up because of your management of your energy and your focus in the business is off. And the client needs to be realigned to be able to recapture that money. Because the other thing people don't think about, the revenue that we create can buy back our time and we can have more opportunities. All that leakage, that's stealing years away from you. Like in my world, I tell people when they're going to have a professionally managed account, any percent above 1.5% is going to eat away 20% of your future value. So if I'm talking to someone that's in their 30s and they go to a certain place, they really, really big company, they got them in every city. These guys charge up to 5.5% to manage your money. And it's not that they do a super duper good job managing it. They do an average job. They do about the same as every other big company. Now, with all of those extra fees, you got to think about fees compounding. You have to think about years where your account is down, and now you're paying compounding fees. So now just to get back to where you were, your account has to do something crazy. For example, if a client experiences a 50% loss, and then the next year they have a 50% gain, a lot of these fugazi fiduciaries will say, oh yeah, it's a wash. It's a wash. When in reality, you've lost a quarter of your account. So if we had 100,000 in the account, you lose 50%, you're at 50,000. If next year it goes back up 50%, you're at 75,000. You're missing $25,000. But it's a wash. You know, men lie, numbers don't, but statistics can be manipulated. So what am I even talking about? But it's opportunity costs. You know, these guys charging every 1% over 1.5% is going to be 20% of your future years money, or you could look at it as years of life that they're taking away from you. That's opportunity cost. That's why we make these things lean and mean over here with my firm, so you can get off the hamster wheel as quickly as possible.
Right. Absolutely.
I think this is the first episode ever where we didn't immediately have to throw out a disclosure and a disclaimer, because it was more so a broad talk about our civic duty to build with our communities, to maximize our businesses, and to bring in these different pieces, such as nonprofits, and to normalize solving our problems without the government.
It's the only chance we got, because the reality is, as super pro-black as I am, we are 13% of the population. So if it starts getting into real nastiness, which we're not too far away from, given the economic predicament of the country as a whole, like looking at these wealth gaps, bro, where they said 70% of consumer spending is coming in from the top 3% of earners rather. So it's the same people. It's the same people that's spending money, and those are the people that are keeping the economy afloat. And it's like, bro, well, what about the everybody else? You know, like, we can't use that as a measurement of the economy if it's such a small group of people that are carrying the whole thing. So with all of the economic despair and all of the distractions that are intentionally being provoked and invoked, I don't see how this ends well if we're not intentional about truly building community around commerce.
You said it. I couldn't agree more.